Hey, Jonathan, I wonder if you have thoughts. I mean, preaching is something we're all growing in, as people who strive to proclaim the word of God. I wonder if you have some thoughts on growing as a preacher. What are some things that young preachers or new preachers should be thinking about as they're trying to grow?
Well, I hope we're growing. I'd like to think I'm growing. Growth is always, often anyway, a painful process. And I think for the preacher, we need to be willing just for some discomfort and some difficulty in growing. And I think I would say, if you want to grow as a preacher, the main thing to find is a congregation, a listening group of people who love the word and who are hungry to be fed. There's nothing more dispiriting and soul-destroying than trying to preach in a context where people don't want to hear the word. That's very, very difficult context in which to grow. I mean, I know some listening to this will be operating in that context, and may the Lord give you grace for that. That's really tough. My great privilege has been where I've been developing, I've always had people who are hungry for the word, and if they knew I was seeking to open up the word, they would forgive me quite a lot. And also from a group who have that true hunger, you get, even in unspoken ways, you get a sense of what is helpfully opening up the word, and there's a response to that. And then you realize other things don't work so well. You try a type of illustration or an approach to structure, and you realize the saints just aren't fed by that. And you just learn by the response or lack of response some things to stop doing and some things to do well. I think the other thing is, you have to be willing to try and to fail and to learn from mistakes. You learn in most things in life, you learn by doing and you learn by your mistakes. That's absolutely true as a preacher. It's tough in preaching because you're so exposed. It's so public and your mistakes are so public. So that's an uncomfortable thing, and you have to make your peace with it. It's humbling. I think it's one of the ways that the Lord keeps our feet sort of planted on the ground, that we learn in public. But with that, I would say, you have to learn how to make your peace with criticism and with feedback. And no one likes criticism. No one particularly likes feedback. Even if we sort of say, yes, please give me feedback, I should have it. None of us really enjoys feedback. But we need to learn to make our peace with it, because most criticism, and sometimes, a preacher will get unpleasant criticism, really, that's not very kindly meant. Most of it will be kindly meant. But I tend to feel that in all criticism, there is something worth hearing. There's a grain of something. Yeah. And I would say, when feedback comes, when criticism comes, hearing it, giving some time for the emotion to fade away, and then to analyze it and say, okay, what is of substance there? And almost everything I've ever received back on my preaching, I would say there was substance there. Even the stuff that was very, very uncomfortable to hear. So that's one thing. I would say listening to good preachers is good. You'll never be exactly like the good preacher you're listening to. So you'll pick up things, and that's great, but never expect just to be like them. You'll be your own person. You'll develop in your own way. I think that's important. Listen to other preachers. Don't listen to them too much on the passage you're preaching on Sunday. Yeah. Because you get caught. You get caught and you think, well, he's done that perfectly and I can't do it my way. So be wary of that. But listen to good preachers, people you respect and would like to emulate. And I would say just keep at it. Yeah. It's painful. It's hard. It's tough work. It's intellectually hard work. It's spiritually hard work. It's time consuming. It's not easy. And the only way to grow is by doing and making mistakes and trying again next week. But the Lord does grow us in it, little by little by little, even through the pain of it.
Absolutely. I wonder too, on the flip side, is there something, maybe a preacher who's listening to this who has a younger preacher in their ministry? Is there ways to give helpful feedback to preachers?
Well, yeah, I think there's a little bit of an art to it. And I think the reality is most of the time preachers who are experienced can take a younger preacher and, frankly, could give feedback that would just decimate the sermon. That's possible. And there are some who are pretty good at doing that. And I would say, being careful to affirm where it's possible to affirm, because although we need to hear the feedback, we need to have just enough confidence left to go back into the pulpit, and a young preacher needs to be given that. And I think if we're just destroyed by criticism, it's very difficult to get back up there. So there needs to be enough positive reinforcement, and there will always be stuff that's good and that's bad.
Yeah.
Find the good and affirm, but then give the feedback that is, you can see a way that this young preacher can respond to it, take it on board, and make some changes. So choose a couple of things, 3 at maximum, but choose a couple of things of substance that are quite specific that the young preacher can take away in the context of being affirmed, I think.
And as you're listening to a younger preacher's sermons, that can even help you grow as well, and giving feedback to them.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
And inevitably, if you have some humility about you as a preacher, if I have some humility about me as a preacher, listening to other preachers, including younger preachers who are maybe less experienced, can actually do us good for our own preaching. We can be learning something, and we can be edified. And apart from anything else, I think if you're someone who has a concern about the future of the pulpit, there's something very joyful about being involved with younger preachers who are, a few years behind. Yeah. And you think, well, this is the future. This is wonderful. The Lord is raising up servants. So that's a joyful thing as well to be involved in.
Yeah, and you've always given me helpful thoughts, and we always have a good laugh in there too, which is good for the humility and sense of humor. So I would definitely encourage people out there to seek somebody you admire to pour into you, so that you can grow in this good task that God's given us to do.
That's right. And I would say as well, for the maybe senior minister who's got a trainee or 2 on a team or whatever, I would encourage you to carve out the time for giving feedback. That's actually often the biggest barrier, just finding the time and the energy to be involved in this way. And I know I've had folk on the team here who wanted more feedback, and I've struggled to give the time. And the longer I go on, the more I think this is vitally important as a use of my time to give energy to that. And I'd certainly encourage you to make time as you're able.
That's great. Thanks, Jonathan.